Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Last year when Mumbai was flooded, almost every environment specialist and urban planner had predicted this will happen again and again. It's scary how easy it is to make this prediction, and you don't really have to be a qualified urban specialist to do so. Year after year, screaming headlines and heated debates yield little or no results. Nobody really knows how things will change for India's financial capital, which has become a very sorry story globally every monsoon. On Urban Reality today, our attempt is to piece together some solutions, because it simply cannot be that there are none. Let me introduce you to my panelists, but before that, here are some citizen voices of Mumbai city, even as they struggle today to find their feet in a city which is half submerged.
तरह की स्थिति देख के लगता है कि संघाई बन जाएगा ये।
कभी नहीं सर, कभी नहीं हो सकता है ऐसा।
देखो इसमें क्या बुलेट ट्रेन चलेगा?
ये बुलेट ट्रेन के लिए जगह है ये।
पानी वहाँ पे वाटर खींचने का मशीन था, वो भी हटा लिए लोग। कम से कम करोड़ रुपए खर्चा किए यहाँ पे आगे हिंद माता में। करोड़ रुपए खर्चा करने के बावजूद भी देखो ये हाल है। मैं तो बोलता हूँ उससे भी ज्यादा पानी भर गया है।
सब गटर के बंद है और ये कभी कुछ नहीं हुआ। मशीन लगा कुछ काम का नहीं, अभी तक कुछ भी नहीं हुआ, कोई फर्क नहीं है। किले कितना जोर से बारिश गिरेगा तो आधा घंटा लगेगा, कोई मतलब नहीं है।
मुश्किल तो है ही ना सर ट्रैवल करना, कितनी पानी भरी हुई है आगे। आधे पौने घंटे से तो यहीं पे बैठे हुए हैं, कब पहुंचेंगे कब आएंगे मालूम नहीं।
चलता है तो आम बात है, पिछले 30-40 साल से यही होता है, तो कोई नई बात नहीं है।
जगह जगह पानी भर गया है, बिल्डिंग में लॉबी में अंदर पानी आ रहा है, सुबह सुबह आने जाने के लिए थोड़ा दिक्कत हो रहा है।
कोई नई बात नहीं है, and this is what's the most worrying part of Mumbai today. Madhav Pai, Director India WRI, India Sustainable Cities, China NC BJP spokesperson and a Mumbai resident. We also have with us Ashwin Mahesh, an urbanist, joining us today on this discussion. I think let's just start with a very simple question, China, and this one is for you. I know that there have been different voices, and one of the strongest defense which has come forth from the government and civic agencies is that this was abnormal rain and not really a failure of workable plan. Would you really defend that?
Well, I think there are a couple of points. Irregular rain patterns that one has been seeing year after year, panning out from June going up until October. Yes, there has been some incessant rain and adverse reactions to weather climates which have been totally out of control. But also the topography of Mumbai, where you have so many low-lying pockets coupled with the high tide, you're bound to have flooding at certain pockets, whether it's Sion, Vadala, if you go into the suburbs, then Kalyan, Dombivli, Thane, Nala Sopara, Bhivandi and Vasai Virar being the worst in terms of planning and other avenues as well. I don't want to put our hands up and say that we are not accountable. Clearly, the state government has said that even if the municipal corporations need to do their job, it is for us as an overviewing body to ensure that we have systemic working between multiple agencies. This could be the local municipal corporations, the MSRDC, the MMRDA, the railways, and multiple such agencies that are responsible.
Okay, Madhav Pai, you know, China has laid out some ground rules. She's saying, look, we are not saying that we are not responsible or civic agencies, but a lot of work was done, yet things have not improved for that city. Flooding is now almost an annual ritual. I think environmentalists have already established that these kind of heavy rainfall and the abnormal rainfall patterns are going to concentrated over a few days is not going to be an exception, it's going to be a norm. So what is really the answer?
No, I agree with you. It's a norm, and it's probably going to get worse over time, you know, just given how much the temperatures are rising. So I think, you know, now we need to really start thinking about how do we build resilient infrastructure. You know, the stormwater drains can only carry a certain amount of water. I think, you know, local level plans of where, you know, you identifying places where water can get stored or logged, you know, so you identify places so that you can let water locally run off to these places, identifying places, whether it's schools or other things that can be used in case of power shortages and other things. So, you have to start thinking about building resilient infrastructure. We need to rethink the materials we use. We have been paving so much of the city. I think, when I was growing up, our building compound was basically mud, and today it's all paved for cars. You need to start thinking of permeable surfaces. So clearly there has to be a rethinking of how you engineer the city in the light of the fact that climate is going to change. You're going to have these bigger, stronger spells of rain, and that the stormwater system can only be accommodated to a certain extent. So I think that planning has to come in place. Having said that, I mean, systems that get built, I mean, the newly opened rail crossing at the Curry Road station had like leaks in the roof, was water was flowing, so there was clearly no consideration in design to sort of this heavy downpour. And I think so one is that I think engineering now has to think about it from a resilience perspective, how you can expect this rain, and then how do you design for it. That's one thing that we need to do, and massively train and rethink how engineers in our city work. And then I think whatever we do, right. I mean, and this is what China was also saying, is potholes, etc. I mean, those kinds of things need to get solved, because we can't get caught behind those kinds of things. So.
Okay. All right. We also have Dayanand Stalin. He's an activist and project director at NGO Vanashakti. He's joined us as well. Mr. Stalin, there's public outrage, anger against civic authorities and local government. But, the fact is that the city gets caught unawares just every time. Do you think resilient rethinking how you're going to build Mumbai now is the base of solving this problem?
To start with, I would say look at the last 5 years. Every year it gets worse and worse, and every year we get the same old assurances that we are ready for rain, we will be better prepared, and all that rubbish. The fact is that every so-called development which has happened to create real estate for the developers. If you see the walls that are built on the rivers, on the creeks, these are all impediments for the discharge of flood waters. There are no floodplains. There is no place where the seawater and the stormwater can meet and interact till it is low tide. This is very simple, the simple fact of it. The problem is when you prevent the water from spreading onto the salt pans, when you prevent the river flood lanes to be from being constructed, when you keep it open, then you will have lesser floods. It's a low-lying city, face it, and everything cannot be concentrated in Mumbai. Leave some spaces for the water to go and clash with the seawater and go away when it is low tide. No matter who tells you what, I am telling you on this show that no amount of engineering solutions will allow you the luxury of sitting without a flood coming in here. You will have severe floods every year after year, no matter how much money you spend. The answer is to remove those blessed walls which are kept on the salt pans, on the river sides, and allow the water to spread out and wait till it is low tide. We are under the tidal influence. We need to remember that fact. You cannot conquer the sea. No one has done it so far. That is the bottom line. But if you see, this kind of talk isn't coming up from anyone. Everyone is talking about how new pumps will be fitted. Where are you going to pump the water into? It's not going into outer space. It's going to come back into your drains. If you go to Dadar, Shivaji Park, you will see that the sea has come in. It has touched the mayor's bungalow and it's coming well onto that road there. And what are you talking about? When there is so much of ingress, where is the place?
Okay, Mrs. Stalin, what you're proposing is quite, let's say, revolutionary. You're saying you have to stop building altogether, and you probably have to take down some walls where you're stopping water backflow into the sea, because you can't stop the sea from behaving as it is. Agree with you, it's a very, 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 very big challenge. Ashwin, Mahesh, what do? You can't stop building, can you, in a city like Mumbai? Or maybe that's a new kind of thinking one needs?
See, it's a complex thing. We have to accept that. The reality is that because the environment is changing, there is greater occurrence of frequent events of intensity. There's more rain that falls in high volume again and again. At the same time, there's an economic reality also. The city, for example, gets 1,200 people per day moving into the city. The number of housing units that are sanctioned to be built is not even half of that. So virtually half the people that are coming into the city have to live in some kind of makeshift arrangement. And these makeshift arrangements don't follow any planning regime. Ultimately, we have to create a planning regime in which we anticipate problems and solve them by measuring what is going on as well. In the 74th Amendment in 1992, it was said that every major metropolitan area will have a certain kind of planning authority. And the planning authority will do this and that and look at all the relationships between the economy, between housing, between mobility, between resources and all of that together. No major city in India has implemented this framework. We think that if we ignore the law, we think that if we sort of just go on in an ad hoc manner, we will always be able to respond to situations as they arise. The fundamental flaw today is an administration being in responsive mode rather than in proactive mode. And unfortunately, ordinary people end up bearing the brunt of this thing. This is not the kind of problem that you can solve.
I think you raised a very important point. Let me go back to Shaina. I'll come back to you, sir. Shaina, administration being in the responsive mode rather than being in a proactive mode. Now, this is across all Indian cities. Mumbai bears the brunt because of the monsoon outlash. But tell me one thing. I mean, is the government aware of the fact that, look, with the weather changing, with the rainfalls pattern changing, we have to think through even something like a Mumbai development plan, because right now there is nothing in that plan which talks about how to deal with this kind of incessant rainfall.
Yeah, so I think that we should actually take the learning from Vasai Virar, because Vasai Virar is a case of absolute misuse of power, where people have given permissions to builders to build just any way they wanted to, ad hoc. A certain family that has controlled the area.
Shaina, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but I would not agree. Maybe Vasai Virar was the worst affected because of a lot of construction permits not given. I mean, right there in Worli, you have tall buildings, and these are apartments being sold at 10 crores, 20 crores, and water flowing from those projects right onto SPV Road. So it's not. Vasai Virar may be the worst affected, Shaina, but it's all over Mumbai.
Can I complete my point?
Yes.
Thank you for interjecting, but can I complete my point? What am I trying to arrive at? That if you have bad planning, where you have construction on mangroves and areas where you cannot have buildings, you will have floods. What one of your earlier panelists said is absolutely correct. Let's concede to the fact that Mumbai is reclaimed land, and a lot of this is low-lying pockets. I do agree that if you have pumping stations, but where are we going to pump out the water? Do understand the disaster management team this time did a fantastic job. Very few people would want to acknowledge it, but you go on Twitter and you will have some honest Mumbaikars who say that the way they were standing on the streets, containing the water, seeing that, you know, we have systems in place is also something worthy of praise. So let's not just constantly sit here and criticize and say, you know, this happens year after year. Think of what the solutions are. Come up with conclusive solutions. Now the damage has been done. How do we move forward? We move forward with, if we have our neighboring smart cities all equipped, properly planned, and not being subject to this kind of a flooding as we have seen.
So upgradation of infrastructure and relooking at how the city is planned, civic coordination, lots of solutions here. But what Mumbai really needs, as per a McKinsey report, is $220 billion of investment in hard infrastructure and smart technology to become future-proof for the next 20 years. And we're still talking just next 20 years. We're going to come back and look at where will that money come from. $220 billion is the kind of infrastructure investment that Mumbai will need if it really wants to prevent another backlash of abnormal monsoons. And look at Maharashtra's own ambitious 10% growth target. How is that going to come about without infrastructural planning? Needs are completed and there's an urgent overhaul. Let me go to Madhav Pai and ask him this very basic question. Madhav, we talk about numbers like $220 billion of investment, but I'm sure there have to be solutions which can be immediately also implemented and planning that can prevent such sort of situations.
one, you can now model, you can create models where you can, put down 15 centimeters of rain, 20 centimeters of rain in an hour and see where it collects. And sort of building on Mr. Stalin's point, you can then identify locally also places where this water can collect when the tide is going up and down. This is where creating green spaces, using roads as runoff, creating green network, the cycling network that is being planned, that can be planned as to be inclusive of being like a network that can be used to drain. So, locally, I think you can be more proactive. You can try to think about what kind of rain will come and then try to prepare or identify places where the water can accumulate. Simple solutions. In Ahmedabad for years, every house has a tank where they collect water and then they use for 8-9 months. So these simple solutions of creating also spaces where water, today there are two problems. Rain is coming and it's coming very fast, and then it doesn't rain for long periods of time. So we have to be able to capture the rain also when it falls. And so creating water tanks or things where you can capture this rain and use in the rest of the year. So thinking about these kinds of sort of relatively distributed solutions where water can be stored, areas can be identified where waterlogging can happen until sort of tide levels fluctuate. So these are all possible, but these require at the ward level type of solutions to do. Also, we have to remember, we might spend the billions, but 55% of the people in Mumbai live in slums. And these are the people who are worst impacted. You might show pictures from Worli, but you have to really go to places where people live, to Golibar and Charkop, where people live in slums and are the ones who are sort of most struggling with this. And this is the reality of our city.
Always. Then, Stalin, I know that your solution was that you have to literally ensure that the water actually flows back into the sea, and that needs not just re-engineering but a stoppage of the city to grow. That's a very rapid solution, I might say, probably not likely to happen. Could you offer us some solutions which are implementable and which can be done?
You have got me wrong. I never said that the city shouldn't grow. I am saying in the concept of urban development, there is a term called as floodplains. Floodplains are the areas where the flood waters collect and go, and that is absent in the dictionary of the urban development of Mumbai and MMR. There is no identification of these floodplains. You may construct, so let us say you are constructing a 20-story building today, you make it 40. You want to give more space to developers, you want to create more business, fine, do it. But leave some spaces where nature can, vent its fury. Now, I'll tell you what goes wrong in the entire system. You need to understand this. Today, what happens, the urban development, the BMC gives permissions to the builders, and after it is given, the the intimation of disapproval is given, then the papers go to the environment department, who has no say in it. It should be the other way around. First, the environment department understands whether this area can be constructed on, and then it should go to the BMC. This is where everything goes wrong. The environment department is not involved in any of the decisions, nor are there any scientists in the government machinery who are advising him on how to construct, where to construct. Nobody is stopping the growth of Mumbai. You can construct as much as you want.
Okay, you've raised a very important point, and it's an easy to do or easy to implement solution. Ashwin Bahesh, your views?
See, let's look at it this way. Let's say that there are 4 levels at which you can solve this problem. The state government can solve the problem, or the metropolitan planning authorities can solve the problem, or the municipal bodies can solve the problem, or citizens can solve the problem. If you say that these are the 4 levels at which things can be done, we have concentrated power in the 2 weakest levels and left the 2 important levels out. That is, the state government has a lot of power, but it is very far away. The state government is responsible for 450 towns and cities. It's not just for Mumbai. Then we have concentrated power in the municipality. The municipality is simply an aggregate of various wards where each of the wards themselves don't have any power. Instead of these 2 levels, the levels that need to be strengthened are the metropolitan level and the citizen level. If the ward committees and the metropolitan planning bodies work well, then the city can be managed better. But we have concentrated power in the state government and the municipal council, and these are simply not enough to solve this kind of problems. We've just got the wrong structure of government to even deal with this problem.
Wow, all right. Again, I'm getting overwhelmed, China, that look, there are so many solutions, but most of these solutions seem to be macro solutions. My question to you is, you've heard all the panelists. How do you think that the government can look at some of these recommendations coming from experts and implement them?
Well, I think a lot of the suggestions are very, very good. And as a Mumbaiker, of course, the only concern is that we should not lose lives to a situation which could have been averted or avoided for whatever reason. Now, whether it is in Kalyan, a lady losing life on a pothole, losing balance, or whether the roads are very narrow and need to be widened, whether the potholes need to be repaired, or whether we need to have flood plains which are non-existent at this juncture, whether there needs to be a review at the vis-a-vis the development plan, or the better coordination between municipal authorities in whether it's Kalyan, Dombivli, Thane, Mumbai, for that matter. I think that Vasai Virar as well. We need to have a central agency which is manned by the Chief Minister, which is his viewpoint, where everyone is accountable for their individual jobs rather than passing the buck.
But China, what I'm still not hearing is, or at least maybe in, once their sanity returns to Mumbai, perhaps the government and the civic authorities will start looking at just the entire planning. I think there is a rethink needed as how you're going to develop Mumbai going forward, because, potholes or desilting or pumping stations are really not the long-term solutions, as most of our experts have said. But, well, we're going to end on this note that hopefully we will not see a similar situation next year, and we don't have to repeat this discussion and this debate in 2019. Madhav Pai, Shaina NC, Mr. Dayanand Stalin and Ashwin Mahesh, thank you very much for joining me today. It's a goodbye from me on a hopeful note. Well, that's all we can do, and keep our fingers crossed for 2019.